Thank you. Hello, everybody. I am Oakwalker, and we're here with Earth Medicine Soul Care, our podcast on basically medicine principles around the world, and specifically between me and my cohort, Mr. Frank over there.
Hello, I'm Stronghorse. So I think we left the last week or the last podcast off with where we went into balance and
Mhm.
we were talking about, medicine and et cetera, that we'd get it a little bit into grace, with
Yeah,
and because I think it's important that we let everybody understand that we both follow several different paths. We're not pigeonholed into the Native American or the Earth medicine uh, paths. Although I think for both of us, it's sort of the mainstay of our background.
yeah, I'd say so.
But we both are also. I think I consider myself a Christian, and I think you probably do also.
A
Um,
former Christian, anyway.
yeah. So bring that up because we're going to discuss grace, and I think grace. I don't know if that's um, an aspect of teachings it's solely taught by the Christians or what, but I know that is a big part of it, and so I'd like to. I think we ought to jump into it. So why don't you start it off, Walker? What's your feeling is about how to live in grace or what God's grace looks like?
Okay, I can begin from a few places. So basically, I said former Christian. I've been baptized two times into the Christian faith. Once when I was a teenager into the Methodist, and then when I was a grown up, well, at the age of about 21, I was baptized into the Southern Baptist faith, and both times I felt like I didn't really belong there. So I went and looked for other things, and I spent a lot of time looking at a lot of different modalities as far as spirituality is concerned. Some I wish I'd spent more time in. I would have liked to have seen a bit more of the Judaism and more Islam in my background, but I looked into the Bhagavad Gita and that modality from the ancient Indian and the Native American and Hawaiian and Taoism was a place where I really started in. And I can honestly say that you look in any of these modalities and there's a core of grace in all of them, such that I think that really the creator is is really expressing itself through all of these modalities in some way or another, and that they're all leading us to a point of basically non-attachment and grace, or non-judgment and grace. Uh, and that's where the grace comes in, is in the ability to accept things the way they are, basically, instead of having to walk through the world trying to, being angry at everybody and trying to change all this, change all that. I can work for change from a point of balance and grace, and still work for change, like you were mentioning in the last podcast, where you said you don't stand by a shovel and pray for a hole, you know. And by the same token, I don't have to sit here and pray that the world is going to get better. I can actually go out and uh, accepting the world the way it is, and accepting the balance of things the way they are. I can still work to improve the way things could be, which is a point of both works and grace coming together and working at the same time. I'm not sure I'm still making any sense, but that's sort of how I look at the whole walking the path of the beauty way, as the Dene would call it.
Yeah, I think the teaching I got on that is if you look at the different worlds, religions, or spiritual paths as spokes on a wheel,
Uh-huh.
uh, and they all come into the center, and so they're all supportive of the wheel of life
Yeah.
in of itself, but they function as different spokes. And so I think all of us through, and I think, let's just go ahead and lay it out on the line. Both of us accept the fact that we live many different lifetimes,
Hmm.
as different spirit personalities, and so I think we journey through all these different uh, aspects to see grace from multiple viewpoints,
Well, I like that.
and so it's a matter of trying to integrate these things, which I think follows exactly what you're. Yeah, my opinion of the creator is exactly like yours. It's a multi-dimensional, all-knowing being who is constantly expanding into different dimensions of different realities to examine itself.
Yes, yes.
And so in my teachings, in a lot of the pipe ceremonies we call in grace from the East. Well, in my teachings, the East is also the place of mirrors of self-reflection.
That's interesting.
And so I was thinking about it when we had our little break there, and I think that mirrors of self-reflection, I think, are vital to live in grace. I just think they're absolutely vital because Um, and referring back to what we were talking about on our second podcast, the key is to get out of being reactionary. The
Hmm.
key is to get into a place of viewing, yourself and viewing what's going on around you and looking for the medicine and things. And one of the most vital places that you have to look is in yourself.
Totally.
And I think that sort of differentiates people on a spiritual path from a lot of people that are maybe on a religious path. And I say that in very general terms,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it I think when you get on a spiritual path, it becomes vitally important that you volunteer and participate on viewing yourself,
Yeah.
taking a hard look at yourself and seeing, what's the good and the bad and the ugly look like, you know,
Uh-huh.
and because at the end of the day, the reason you're on that, you made that choice was you're looking for spiritual maturity. You
Yeah.
want to mature, and it's not a happenstance situation. It's something you have to be actively engaged in. And so I think in that process of acquiring spiritual grace or spiritual maturity, grace is a huge ingredient in that.
And
Because Go ahead.
and it's a indicator of how your maturity is progressing because
Absolutely.
you will find yourself more and more graceful as you go along. And that's just a natural process of being willing to accept yourself as being fundamentally uh, I'm just going to say not where you might want to be. I hate that word that people are fundamentally flawed because I really believe that we come into this situation not flawed, but we're coming into flawed systems of being and arenas that are set up in ways to challenge us and to becoming more and more mature and more, growing into a better state of grace, frankly.
Yeah, I
So,
agree with that 100%. I think I think one of the vital aspects of of looking at the mirrors of self-reflection is that you're wanting to open up portals and doorways of opportunity.
mhm,
And I mentioned last time also catching minimal chance, and people that are really highly invested in their ego, that are
mhm,
highly invested in impressing other people with how awesome they are and how much they know or whatever, but when that's their primary function in life and mirrors of reflection have absolutely no use for them and they don't even know what it is, they
uh-huh,
can't they can't catch minimal chance.
right.
It's not, it's there, but they don't know it, and it just passes them by.
Uh-huh.
And so I think I agree with you. Everybody's not particularly flawed, but the way in which they choose to manage themselves is flawed.
Hmm. It comes
And
from a flawed indoctrination, though.
exactly, exactly. And so I think one of the key points of why we decided to do this is to talk about different aspects of ourselves and our experiences in this thing so that people have choice,
Yeah.
and understand they have choice, and it doesn't have to be some scary, fearful, when are they going to put on the aluminum tin hats,
Oh, yeah.
you know, it's we're both pretty well grounded in our masculinity and in our humanity, and but we didn't get there overnight.
No, not by a long shot.
Yeah. So it's the mirrors of self-reflection, I think, is a vital aspect of learning how to live in grace. And I think that that aspect of patience that we talked about before is also a huge factor.
Yeah, being on the east, your mirrors of self-reflection on the east aren't entirely unlike on in my medicine wheel. The east is the intellectual side. So my medicine wheel is broken up into the physics, it's got earth, water, air, and fire going around the wheel, but it's also got the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, and the intellectual. And that intellectual one is over there on the east, and it's associated with the ancestors, my ancestors, and the ancestors of the tradition, which are the ones that are standing there looking back at you, going, yeah,
Right.
you got it. Look at these two. I did that too.
Right.
Yeah.
I got a mirror reflection for you.
Yeah. Wait till you see this one.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they're always laughing because it really isn't that serious. I mean, it's so serious, and it is. I mean, I don't. There's a there's a tightrope that I find myself walking a lot, is because it's. I know that it's very serious. What's happening in the world today is very, very serious, and I don't want to, like you said, catching minimal opportunity. It's like a leaf going by in the wind. And if I'm aware and in balance, I can catch that leaf on its way past. And that leaf will have a little fortune on it that's like, this is what you need to know. And I've got that. And I think that I'm at that point in history as well, where they're very, very crucial happening in the world right now. And that's cool. That's very cool. But it's also not that serious, because there's still another 3.5 billion years of this expansion of the universe to play out. And there's a lot, there's a lot of time here.
Yeah.
you know, if I don't get it right this year, by George, there's going to be another leaf.
Right. 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 Well, and I want to touch on that, not taking things seriously, because that's a huge paradox,
It
and
is.
a real important one, and it's I mean, I love humor. I love it, and I use humor all the time to break energy up, you know, and because
Sometimes
you
to
know,
my detriment, I do too.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's more times that I think I'm funny than other people think I'm funny, but it's a tool in my kit, and
Uh-huh.
so you're right, it's a tightrope that you walk in terms of not taking things too seriously, but also seeing things as I would say valid. You know,
Yeah.
everything is valid in terms of what it's presenting, what it's doing, what's occurring. I mean, we can look at there's lots of ways to look at what's going on in the world today, and certainly mirrors of self-reflection would be a very good discussion to carry on with that, not only
Uh-huh.
on an individual basis, but on a collective basis. I
Yeah.
think the country's really coming into a place where they're having to look at trends that have been going on for decades here
Uh-huh.
that aren't serving anybody anymore,
Right.
and so those mirrors of reflection, and so and yeah, and I've noticed that also. I think in just in out on the streets and all, there's a lot of people who are um, conscious of and wanting to express grace and kindness and caring that maybe didn't necessarily think about that as much previously.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, there again, there's some medicine in the situation.
Right.
There's a lot of people that are like, wait a minute, this is out of control, man. How do we get here? How
Right.
did this, what's going on here? And um, I think that I mean, my sense is the word, I guess, is community.
Hmm.
You know, I think there's a growing awareness that we got to have community,
Yeah.
and and in that sort of the bonding of a true community that's not something that's just a group of people that believe the same thing, but a community of diversity is that people are willing to look at themselves within the context of that. And
Yes.
I think that's where a lot of the resistance is right now, because a lot of the people who are in resistance to diversity, they don't want to look at themselves at all.
No, they
At
just,
all, man. They're like, no, I got, I'm too important anyway, because there's nothing to see there.
yeah.
Um, so there's a clash going on there, I
Yeah.
mean, there's a huge clash going on there. And I think that, it's the birthing of grace.
I think so too. Um, it's so, so I don't know how to make this analogy because I want to see grace like popping out of being birthed, right? And but it isn't being birthed, it's just finally, I think maybe sprouting out of the seed that's or sprouting out of the ground finally, because it's been buried for a while. And we've been teaching things that are not graceful for a long time now. A long, long, long time. And I think that those modalities, some of those modalities that we've taken for granted for so long, now are proving themselves to be dysfunctional. And as they come to be more and more obviously, it's obvious that they're dysfunctional, right? Because of the inequalities, the unhappiness. Today I heard that the happiness curve used to be shaped like a U. Because you were happy in your childhood, and then you had to go to work, and then that was your lowest happiness ebb. And then as you got older, your happiness got better. But now it's shaped just like a diagonal, and it goes just straight up, and you're like miserable, 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 miserable. And then there at the very end, bazing, you don't give a shit anymore. And then there's your happiness level all of a sudden.
Right.
And
Get 6 months of it before you die, right?
right. Exactly. And like, the researchers are like, oh my God, what happened? And I'm like, what? What do you think happened? You taught misery for 2 centuries, and now you're wondering why it didn't work. So and that's what we're doing here. We're giving a method of hope, or throwing a rope out to people that really it is okay. It's okay to be miserable. It's also okay to be hopeful. And it's also okay to use the mirrors of self-reflection in that way that have been so growthful for the two of us. And it took some time, especially, I mean, yeah, I tell people, boy, if you only knew where I came from, you'd be so proud of me.
I know. Right.
And they're
Right.
looking at me like, yeah, well, I'm not sure how I like where you are yet,
Right.
you know.
I had a discussion one time. We were driving out to from LA to a Joshua Tree, and
Uh-huh.
they have a teaching about different personalities and projecting moods and this and that, and one of them is sweetness.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and so one of the girls in the car was trying to teach me what sweetness is, and I kept going, I just don't understand it. I mean, I don't get it. What's the point of it? I mean, she was just getting so frustrated, And finally she goes, all right, look, her husband was named Tim. She says, Tim, when sometimes he wants something from me, how he gets real sweet and I give it to him. And I thought for a minute, I went, yeah, yeah, I do. I do see that. She goes, well, that's what sweetness is. And I went, oh my God, you get stuff with it? Oh, totally get it now.
Right? Oh, it's transactional.
I didn't know you got stuff with it. Uh, so, so now I had like a mirror reflection, like, oh, well, I'm not that sweet, I guess. I mean, it really put me off on a journey, and because that's what she was trying to get me to understand. You've got to learn to be sweet. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I just don't get it. So finding grace is fun.
It is.
It's totally fun. You know,
Yeah, go. I'm looking for a
I just think
story.
it's we could get back into the whole thing about the original sin and beating ourselves with whips or
No,
whatever.
I don't want to do
There's,
that.
there's so much of that crazy stuff that but really finding grace, I think, is just a matter of uh, attracting, wanting to have it. I think your first shot is you just want to have it.
Oh, there you go.
You want to know what it is, and
Hmm.
and then it's like you're opening yourself up to that opportunity.
Right. And you want to be surrounded by that, which gets you into, which might be another podcast subject, what goes around comes around.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can get into that when we start talking about the sacred laws.
Oh, yeah,
But,
there you go.
mhm,
There you go.
yeah, but I think that I think I think purposely grace and God and all have been sort of put out there, where you have to be an exceptional human to be able to understand or tap into that or have a presence with you. This,
Yeah.
and I don't think that I disagree with that, but I think that if you want the presence around you, there's two things that are important. One, you got to ask for it.
Hmm.
And then two, you got to feel like you deserve it.
Well, you have to be it.
You have to be it, and so, there's where mirrors of reflection tie into grace, you
Yeah.
know. I mean, and again, to that example we had, God's in charge, but you can't pray for a hole.
Right.
So, it's a matter of, wanting it, declaring that, expecting it, and deserving it. And I
Hmm.
think if you do that, it responds. I think the universe responds to that, and you
I think
begin
so
to
too.
see grace in things that you would have normally seen before.
Yep.
You
Yep.
agree
And
with
what
that?
isn't going to work is to, it, this is a hard thing. How do you teach empathy? Well, the way not to teach empathy or not to teach grace, the way not to teach it is to say, you asshole, you are bad because you're not graceful.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? This is like that's no,
Let's
you
do some
missed,
guilt. Let's throw
yeah,
some guilt around, see what,
you missed your calling. I mean, there's one accountability is one thing, but then again, if you really want to teach grace, you have to be
be
graceful.
grace. Right. Yeah, show and lead by example,
Right?
just a thought.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of people get crossways with Jesus, is that he was leading by example. But most people think, well, it was Jesus, man. I mean, he could do stuff I could never do. Well, he
Yeah,
also said, greater works than I must you do.
right. So
I mean, that was a big thing for me. When I started thinking about it, I thought, you know what? Game on.
yeah, get busy.
Yeah, game on, man. Let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. And that really projected me into a whole another
Yeah,
realm,
yeah,
and it gave me permission to go into what I would call the unknown and the unknowable.
yeah.
And
Which gets
huh?
back to that patience thing, right? Because so I wouldn't be doing any of this if it hadn't proved itself out somehow that it's effective in my life, right?
Right,
Well, so here I am out there thinking, okay, so I did it. So what's, come on back, but it might be 30, 40 days before I see the results of my work,
right,
or my, my what goes out there. And so I really had to learn that it's not Harry Potter. You don't wave a wand and the
right,
feather goes up in the air, although some people can do that, but
right.
it's not like, this imaginary magic, spell casting thing. Spells take a long time to foment. They have to go through the whole universe, and then, given the patience and the grace and the tolerance, then we can begin to see the results of what we've done. And I had to run tests that took, a long time, weeks.
Well, I think too that, I think that the degree to which you integrate yourself into the natural world
Hmm.
is a lot to that timeline.
Yeah,
A lot, because you're more connected into the elementals. So you're part of the alchemy. If you can integrate yourself into that alchemy, I think the response time is decreased dramatically. You
yeah,
know, for you and I in the world we live in, I mean, there's a whole lot of resistance around us energetically to interfere with that.
hmm,
And that's I think there's really the challenge when how do you balance? How do you get that balance, man?
yeah.
Where you keep yourself involved in the be in the world but not of it, or
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that
There's
the
another
term?
one of those
Yeah,
cross-cultural sayings that come popping back in, which
yeah.
are
And
which
I
are
think that
legion.
I mean, that's vitally important for grace.
Hmm. Yeah,
You know,
and back to
'cause-
non-attachment again.
yeah, because you can get distracted on that real easy.
Hmm. Well, guess what? We're at that yeah, it says running out of time. My screen just popped up. Running out of time. We are running out of time. So why don't we say goodbye to everybody? Thank you all very much for listening to our little podcast about medicine and grace today. And my name is Oakwalker,
And I'm strong horse.
and we will see you on the next go round. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. I hope.
Aho.